I'm Ellis Martin. In this segment of the Ellis Martin Report, I speak with Dr. Paul Wessels, the President and CEO of Western Copper and Gold Corporation, trading on the New York Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange as WRN. Western Copper and Gold Corporation is developing the Casino Project, Canada's premier copper gold mine in the Yukon Territory, and one of the most economic greenfield copper gold mining projects in the world. The Casino Project hosts approximately 7.6 billion pounds of copper, as well as 14.5 million ounces of gold, one of the largest projects of its kind, again held by a junior mining company in the world. Major mining operator Rio Tinto Canada made a $25.6 million strategic investment to advance the company's Casino Project in the Yukon just last year. Paul, welcome back to the program. It's great to visit with you today, as always.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Alice.
I know there's been some exciting things happening with Western Gold and Copper. I'm aware of some of them, but maybe not all of them. Why don't you enlighten us, sir?
Sure, absolutely. It has been quite the month here. Obviously, the big news that we have is that we brought in Mitsubishi Materials as a strategic investor. So they now have 5% of our outstanding shares. We announced that, I guess, about 2 weeks ago here now. And so they come in as a 5% shareholder. That brings us $21 million and a pretty tight market out there. But more importantly, brings a very, very good partner with Mitsubishi Materials onto the register. And then just this morning, we announced that when Rio Tinto, who, as your listeners and you know, is another significant strategic investor in the company, exercised their subscription right. That means that they have the right to, anytime we do financing, they have the right to participate under the same terms to sort of maintain their ownership, which is at 7.8%. So they exercised that right this morning. That brings in another $2.3 million. And again, to be wrong, money is very important in terms of what we're driving to do. But I think more importantly, it shows a continuing commitment from Rio Tinto. They exercised their option last November to extend our investor rights agreement with them. They now have made sure that they keep their 7.8% by exercising their subscription right. So they have shown here now continuously an interest. And I mean, again, I know this, we're getting along well. We're working very, very closely together. But for the market, these are very definitive examples of where Rio Tinto continues to show significant interest in Western Copper and Gold and the Casino Project.
There's so many questions I have for you now. It's hard to pick the next one to go with, actually. Let's start with Mitsubishi. Is there interest in the end user space? How did this roll out?
Let's talk about Mitsubishi Materials. So Mitsubishi, a bit of a household name, right? I mean, they make cars, they make everything, but the group that we're dealing with particularly owns copper smelters. So what they're interested in is the offtake or the right on the concentrate. So that's what they're mostly interested in. If you look at Mitsubishi Materials, where they are involved, particularly in the copper space and copper projects, is as a partner. They're not typically an operator, so they're more a partner of choice rather than an operator of choice. But I mean, for example, they're a partner with Rio Tinto and BHP at Escondida, the largest copper mine in the world. They have that offtake. They are a partner with Freeport at Grasberg, actually the largest gold mine in the world and also a fairly significant copper mine in and of itself. They are a partner with Copper Mountain, and this is in British Columbia, so closer to our neck of the wood in terms of the Copper Mountain mine. So they are the partner of choice, and why I think it's useful for our shareholders, for the company, is that as we look to move this project forward, whether that's someone buying the project outright, whether that's us moving it forward, having Mitsubishi there as really the partner of choice is very, very positive.
I'm aware of their activity in BC with Copper Mountain, and I always believed that Mitsubishi would potentially be a good partner for any company, especially yours. I'm just pleasantly surprised. My apologies, I didn't see that news release come out 2 weeks ago, and I should have because I'm a journalist and I'm a shareholder of the company. This is just stupendous. It's amazing. And do you seek these partnerships out, or do they just know about you through the relationship with everyone in the sector?
I would have talked about this before. When we signed our agreement with Rio Tinto, and this back in 2021. When we signed that agreement with Rio Tinto, I'm very excited with that. Rio Tinto have been a great group to work with. We immediately started to knock on other people's doors, and this resulted in us. We signed over a dozen confidentiality agreements over mostly last year. We had 6 different groups up to site. Lots of interest. I mean, we've talked about this before. An asset like Casino is a rare. I mean, there's just not many large copper assets, economic locations like up in the Yukon. It was the result of that process where we started to have this conversation with Mitsubishi. They came up to site. We spent about a week with them up at site, meeting government, going through the project in quite a bit of detail up in Whitehorse. They loved Whitehorse. And Ellis, I know you've been up to Whitehorse. I love bringing people up there. It's a lot of fun. And then they went through their additional levels of diligence and they came back to us and said, look, we love this. We want to do something with you. And really what we offered is said, look, we're in the final stages of working things through with Rio Tinto. Why don't you come in? We can offer you essentially the same concept as Rio Tinto. Come in as a strategic shareholder up to 8%, so making you even with Rio Tinto, and we'll give you certain rights as part of an investor rights agreement. And so what we settled on was them coming in for 5% in an investor rights agreement that they have that is in place for 2 years.
Do they have exclusivity for the offtake?
They have the right of first negotiation over this 2-year period. It's not exclusivity on the offtake, but suggests that we need to sort of negotiate with them first before we go to anybody else. I mean, the reality is that over the next 2 years, focus is going to be on permitting and getting to some sort of conclusion with Rio Tinto and maybe with Mitsubishi as a partner. There's no desire on our behalf to really start negotiating offtake. It's a little bit early in the evolution of the project to do that. So, but obviously, if you're Mitsubishi, you don't want to sign this agreement with us and then let us run off and negotiate with somebody else. So we have that right of first negotiation. That's one of the key rights that Mitsubishi has as part of their investor right. But again, it's only for that 2-year period, or if they maintain at least 3% shareholding company. And then the other key right that they have is a seat on the technical committee. So we now have a joint technical committee. It's ourselves, it's Rio Tinto, it's Mitsubishi. However, we always have the majority, but I'll be honest, working with Rio Tinto over the past over 2 years now has been really good. They've lent a lot of intellectual horsepower into the project. Bringing Mitsubishi in is going to do the same. It benefits everyone.
And with Rio Tinto increasing their position to make sure they maintain their percentage, and what we just learned about Mitsubishi, there's no doubt that the casino will be a mine, period.
No, exactly. It's really all coming together. I mean, we've got Rio, we've got Mitsubishi. We've always sort of had the government and the First Nation supportive, but that's been the other real change. And it's really actually come down from the federal government level on this drive for critical minerals. And so there's this drive federally for critical minerals. You're looking at, with our casino project, the largest critical minerals mine in Canada. So you've got the feds pushing this project forward. I mean, the territorial government, the new premier, I mean, the previous premier was great, but the new premier, born in mid-January, Premier Pillay, very supportive of mining. He used to be the Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, the Minister of Economic Development, very much pushing the mining file. Importantly, again, for our project and our shareholders, one of the big drives has been looking to provide green grid power for the casino project. And how that's coming forward is a real drive to look at connecting the Yukon electrical grid to the British Columbia electrical grid. And I mean, honestly, I think he was sworn in mid-January and they were tweeting out all the initiatives that they were doing on this 2 weeks later. I mean, this is a big push. The federal budget that came down at the Canadian level also talked about looking at these opportunities for green energy. So it's all aligning very, very nicely in that aspect as well. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be a mine. This is going to be an important mine. It's exciting and everything's lining up here quite well.
I'm proud to say that I can call, as well as you can, I can call Premier Pillay a friend. You see him around getting actively involved. I mean, are you witnessing any of this? I don't quite know how to frame this, but I know that he's a hands-on individual. And have you seen sort of an even quicker track to eventual production since he became the premier, or just the natural course?
Let's keep in mind he got sworn in mid-January and he's got a lot on his plate, but we're all pulling in the same direction on it, which is nice. And I wish I could say I saw, but I don't see much. I see less of him now because he's so busy. But I see what he's doing and I see the direction that he's giving to his ministers, and I see his ministers more than I was seeing them before. Where I see him is places like Ottawa. I was in Ottawa and we were going around in Ottawa meeting with, basically telling people, look, the largest critical mineral mine in Canada, and here's all the good things that we're doing. And I ran into the premier. I didn't even know he was going to be there, but he was there the last time I ran into him. But yeah, I mean, as you said, we both consider him a friend. He's doing what he can do to make sure that this happens. I mean, this is a large mine. This is 44 billion of GDP impact to Canada as a country. I mean, the impact in the Yukon is significant. And it's not just the money, it's about things like green power. You need to have large mining projects such as ourselves moving forward to justify something as bold as connecting the Yukon and British Columbia electric grids. And you need things as bold as the casino project to really sort of look at the next phase of growth and, again, greening with the economy. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time.
You can answer this question any way that you want to. It's entirely up to you, as it always is, Paul. With all that's developed in the last few weeks and the last few months, does it slow down the potential takeout process with Rio Tinto or anyone else? Do we care anymore? Are we just happy to see this project develop and develop and develop until it becomes something amazing with even greater value? I'm a shareholder, and yet with all that I've heard, I'm in no rush for a takeout.
You know what exciting about Mitsubishi? Like I said, they are the partner of choice. What I'll share with you is what they shared with me. They looked at their concentrate supply. They realized they need new concentrate. They made a decision, public announcement, that they're looking at development project. They screened a whole bunch of development projects, shortlisted them, did sites, came down, made them better. So they're in now for the long haul. I think that, back to your earlier comment, it really somewhat guarantees that this becomes a mine. And whether it's a mine with us as an operator are still involved, or whether it's a mine with Rio Tinto buying it out and then becoming the operator, or whether it becomes a mine with somebody else, I think what's good now is that we can sort of look at what's going to be best for the shareholder, what's going to provide us best value. Having Mitsubishi there is going to bring new people, new large copper and more gold. Let's not forget, we got 21 million ounces gold. Every gold company is trying to get just a little, but enough copper that it sort of covers them off. The other thing that happened this morning is that Newmont increased their bid for Newcrest. And, part of that is adding a little bit more copper to the portfolio. So it really sort of, I think, guarantees, like you said, guarantees this can be mine. So, whether or not it, like you said, does it extend things? Maybe, if I'm Rio Tinto, I've got to sort of stop, scratch my chin here and think, do I make a bid? Do I make a joint bid? That's where they go. But I think what's exciting is that even if Rio sits on the sidelines, there's lots of other opportunities here now that Mitch.
So potentially you don't mind being a miner, if that's best for the company, going down the Minto path, hypothetically, or even the Victoria Gold path. And I would say with your share structure, it's much, much, much more attractive.
And we've managed to sort of keep our share count, very, very good and very, very tight. The big push this year is permitting. We're looking to get our application in front of the regulator here early next year. So big push on getting the project forward into that state. We haven't even closed these deals yet. That said, it's somewhat just academic to get them closed, but they'll all be closed here. We're going to close the Rio Tinto end of this month. So once they're closed, we'll have our first technical committee. And so, again, this is adding value to the project and collaboratively working with these groups moving forward. So we'll see. We keep adding arrows to our quiver here in terms of how we can attack this forward. And that's, I think, what good company, good project for the shareholder.
How are you going to prudently spend all that money if you spend it all?
Yeah, well, we're now sitting on an enviable $23 million already. And so we've added another 23 change. So we've got about $46 million bank. Very carefully. The way that we're running the company, obviously we've got to work with Rio and Mitsubishi in terms of ensuring that their wishes and needs are met, and more importantly, their ideas project are investigated. The big push on permitting, but Ellis, we haven't changed. We run this company. I'm running company in terms of keeping our purse strings pretty tight, the same way as when we had an annual budget of $3 million, which wasn't too long ago. We were at 50 cents stock in 2019, right? So that's the philosophy we run the company. We've added a small amount of staff, but we have not staffed up significantly because, again, I think we run a tight ship here, and that's what our shareholders expect. That's what our shareholders experienced over the history of the company, and that's how we're continuing to operate it.
You mentioned earlier in the interview, Paul, that it's amazing that you've raised money, or anybody can raise money, quote unquote, in this market. And it's been a tough market for a lot of people. Have you really felt that across the board, aside from these investments from Rio Tinto and from Mitsubishi?
Where I felt it as a sector, we've been outperforming the sector, I think, because we've had these investments from Rio and from Mitsubishi. But on the back of this announcement this morning, we are up 10 cents, close to 5%. The challenge with this market, I think, and this is the challenge with equities, that people don't know if gold is going to 3,000 or going back down to 1,700. The strength of the copper price is partially the green economy, but partially just the strength of the economy in general. And so economy going to stay hot? Is it go down? So, I mean, you can feel the indecision of your average investor in the market. And we talk to funds and they're like, Paul, that's exciting and I've got some money in you, but maybe a little bit more, but I'm sitting on a bunch of cash because I don't really know what to do right now. So hopefully we'll see things sort of begin to calm down here and move forward. But I think what's exciting today, copper's over $4, gold's over 2,000. No one in the copper gold space, such as ourselves, is complaining about that. What we are complaining about is that investors are not looking to the equity market per se to get exposure to that. And I think that that's going to come. And when it does come, you're going to see hopefully some good movement in share prices.
Well, Paul, I'm very pleased with the course of this interview. It's been very enlightening and rewarding and exciting, actually. I want to thank you. And I look forward to the next interview whenever you want to talk. Thanks so much for joining me today in the program.
All right. Always a pleasure talking to you, Ellis. Look forward to coming back and chatting in the future.
I've been speaking with Dr. Paul Wessels, the president and CEO of Western Copper and Gold Corporation, trading on the New York Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange as WRN. Go to the company's website, westerncoppercorp.com. I'm Ellis Martin, and I'm an investor with Western Copper and Gold Corporation.